I watched from 300 feet above as my daughter's perfect wedding ground to a halt. The rotor blades carved through the afternoon sky, sending waves of sound cascading down onto the manicured lawns below. Through the cockpit window, I could see them all, 200 of the world's most privileged people, frozen mid-champagne toast, staring upward with expressions ranging from confusion to outright terror. The photographer had been positioning the wedding party for their grand portrait when my helicopter descended. I saw my daughter, Emily, my little girl, who used to fall asleep on my chest, shield her eyes against the rotor wash. Her $20,000 dress rippled violently in the downdraft. Her new husband grabbed her waist, perhaps thinking he was protecting her, perhaps just trying to stay upright as $200,000 worth of floral arrangements began to scatter across the venue. I couldn't hear them over the engine, but I could read my daughter's lips as she looked up at the descending aircraft, her face transitioning from shock to recognition to something that might have been horror. "No," she mouthed. "It can't be him." But it was. It was me, and I was about to ruin her perfect day. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. My name is Daniel Hale, and for the past 8 years, I've been a ghost living among the wealthy. Not because I lack money, God knows I have more than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, but because I learned the hard way that showing wealth only attracts vultures. I'm 58 years old. I drive a 2009 Ford F-150 with a dent in the passenger door. I wear jeans from Target and flannel shirts that have seen better decades. My house is a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a middle-class suburb, the kind of place where neighbors mow their own lawns and kids still play street hockey after dinner. To everyone who knows me, I'm just Dan, the quiet widower who used to work in tech and now seems to putter around doing not much of anything. They don't know about the hangars, they don't know about the patents, they definitely don't know about the 9-figure bank balance that grows larger every quarter, fed by royalties from technology I developed 20 years ago that's now embedded in every major security system from Dubai to Manhattan. After Sarah died, my wife, my partner, the only person who ever loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I made a choice. I would live simply. I would hide. I would protect myself from the endless parade of relatives, old friends, and distant acquaintances who'd crawled out of the woodwork when they learned about my success. I wanted to see who would love me when I had nothing to offer. Turns out, that's a very short list. My daughter Emily was 12 when I sold Sentinel Robotics for an amount that made headlines in the business section. She was 20 when her mother died. She's 30 now, and somewhere in those years she learned to measure a person's worth by the size of their portfolio rather than the content of their character. I don't entirely blame her. She grew up in Silicon Valley during the height of the tech boom. She went to Stanford, where every classmate's parent was either a venture capitalist or a founder. She learned to network before she learned to love, to calculate social value before considering human value. Still, I thought I'd raised her better than that. I was wrong. It started 6 months ago. Emily called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice bright with the kind of forced enthusiasm people use when they are about to ask for something. "Dad, big news. Chase proposed." Chase Whitmore III. I'd met him twice. He worked in private equity, spoke in acronyms I was apparently too unsophisticated to understand, and had the kind of aggressive handshake that telegraphed insecurity. His father owned a chain of luxury hotels. His mother sat on 3 corporate boards. They were, in Emily's words, serious people. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I wanted my daughter to be happy. "When's the big day?" "We're thinking next spring. Dad, it's going to be amazing. Chase's parents are helping us plan it. They know the best vendors, the best venues. This is going to be the wedding of the year." Something in her voice made me pause. There was an edge there, a brittleness that reminded me of breaking glass. "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "Oh, don't worry about it." She laughed, too loud, too quick. "Chase's family is handling most of it. We want everything perfect, you know? All our friends, all the important people from Chase's firm, some of his father's investors. It's going to be very high profile." "I'm happy for you, Em." "Thanks, Dad. Listen, I've got to run. We're meeting with the wedding planner. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. That was the last time she called me about the wedding. Over the next 5 months, I heard nothing. No invitations, no save the dates, no requests for my input on venues or flowers or whether she should wear her mother's pearls. Nothing. I saw the updates on social media, of course. Emily posted constantly, dress shopping with Chase's mother, cake tastings at exclusive bakeries, venue tours of estates I recognized from architectural magazines. In every photo, she was surrounded by Chase's family and friends, glittering people in designer clothes with practiced smiles. I was in none of them. I told myself she was busy. I told myself that modern weddings were complicated, that maybe they were keeping the guest list small. I told myself a lot of comfortable lies because the truth that my daughter had written me out of her life was too painful to examine directly. Then, 3 months before the wedding, I decided to be direct. I called her cell. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "Hey, sweetheart, just wondering if you needed any help with wedding planning. I know I'm not much good at that stuff, but I'm here if you need me. Love you." She texted back 4 hours later. "Super busy with planning. We'll call soon." She didn't call. 2 months before the wedding, I tried again. This time, I drove to her apartment in the city, a 2-bedroom in Pacific Heights that probably cost more per month than most people's annual salary. Chase answered the door, his expression shifting from surprise to something like discomfort. "Dan, hey, Emily didn't mention you were coming by." "Surprise visit," I said, keeping my voice light. "Is she home?" "She's on a call with the florist, but come on in." The apartment was exactly what I expected. Modern, minimalist, expensive. Everything looked like it had been photographed for a magazine spread. There were no family photos on the walls, no personal touches that suggested real people lived there. Just carefully curated art and furniture that cost more than my truck. Emily emerged from the bedroom 10 minutes later, her face registering something between annoyance and alarm when she saw me sitting on her uncomfortable designer couch. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Wanted to see my daughter," I said, standing. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Thought I'd check in about the wedding." She exchanged a glance with Chase. He suddenly became very interested in his phone. "Right, the wedding." She sat down on the chair across from me, perching on the edge like she might need to flee at any moment. "We're keeping it pretty intimate, Dad. Just close friends and family." "I'm family," I said quietly. "Of course you are. I just mean, it's complicated. Chase's family is handling most of the planning, and they have very specific ideas about the guest list. It's going to be very formal, very high-end, lots of important people from Chase's firm, some major investors, influential friends." She trailed off, and in the silence that followed, I felt something inside me go very still. "What are you saying, Emily?" She looked at Chase again. He was no help, suddenly fascinated by something outside the window. Emily took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice had that false brightness again, like she was trying to sell me something. "Dad, you know I love you, but this wedding, it's not really your scene. These are going to be very sophisticated people. Tech executives, finance people, old money families. It's black tie, it's formal. There's going to be a lot of networking. I can wear a tuxedo, Em. It's not just that." She was speaking faster now, the words tumbling out like she'd rehearsed them but was rushing through before she lost her nerve. "It's... Dad, you drive an old pickup truck. You wear flannel shirts, you live in the suburbs. These people, they're going to judge us based on who shows up?" Chase's father already has concerns about the optics. "The optics," I repeated flatly. "Don't make this harder than it is. This is my wedding, and I need it to be perfect. I can't have anything that might embarrass us." The air went out of the room. For a moment, I couldn't process what I'd heard. Then Chase cleared his throat, still not looking at me. "Let's be honest here, Dan. No offense, but you look middle class. These are going to be the kind of people who arrived in private jets. We can't have someone showing up who..." "Who what?" I interrupted, my voice dangerously quiet. "Who doesn't fit your aesthetic?" Emily stood abruptly. "Dad, please don't make this into a thing. We're trying to be realistic here. You wouldn't be comfortable anyway. All these wealthy people talking about their businesses and their yachts and their second homes. You'd be miserable." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. This woman in her designer athleisure wear, standing in her expensive apartment, casually uninviting her father from her wedding because he didn't match the decor. "I understand," I said, standing. "You do?" She looked relieved, almost surprised. "I do. You're ashamed of me." "Dad, that's not..." "It's fine, Emily. It's your wedding. You get to decide who comes." I walked toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, your mother would have been heartbroken." I left before she could respond. As I drove home in my embarrassing middle-class pickup truck, through streets lined with homeless encampments and billboards advertising million-dollar condos, I made a decision. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, I'd let them. But first, I'd remind them exactly who they were erasing. 2 weeks later, the envelope arrived. It was heavy cardstock, the kind that costs $5 per sheet, with calligraphy so elaborate it looked like it had been transcribed by medieval monks. My name and address were written in gold ink. For one stupid, hopeful moment, I thought maybe Emily had changed her mind. I opened it standing by my mailbox, ignoring the neighbor who was trimming his hedges and trying very hard not to look curious. It wasn't an invitation. "Dear Mr. Hale," it read in that same elaborate script. "Due to unexpected budget constraints and venue capacity limitations, we regret to inform you that we are unable to accommodate you at our celebration on June 15th. We appreciate your understanding in this matter. With warm regards, Emily Hale and Chase Whitmore III." Budget constraints. Venue capacity limitations. I stood there for a long time, reading those words over and over, feeling something sharp and hot building in my chest. Then I started laughing. It started as a chuckle, then grew into the kind of laughter that makes people worry you're having a breakdown. My neighbor definitely heard, definitely looked over with concern, but I didn't care. Budget constraints. My daughter, who was marrying into hotel money, planning a wedding that probably cost more than most people's houses, was citing budget constraints for why her father couldn't attend. I walked back inside, still laughing, and went straight to my home office. It's a small room at the back of the house, nothing fancy. A desk, a computer, a filing cabinet. The only unusual thing is the safe built into the wall, hidden behind a forgettable landscape painting Sarah bought at a craft fair 20 years ago. I opened it and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents that most people would never see in their lifetimes. Stock certificates, patent registrations, property deeds. I'd been planning to give some of this to Emily after the wedding. A trust fund, something to set her up for life, to make sure she'd always be secure the way her mother and I had always wanted. $8 million. That had been the plan. Invested properly, the interest alone would have given her an income of $500,000 a year without touching the principal. I looked at those documents for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, Richard Chen. We'd worked together since the early days of Sentinel Robotics. He was one of the few people who knew the full extent of my wealth, mainly because he managed most of it. "Richard," I said when he answered, "I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "That trust fund I set up for Emily, I want it dissolved." There was a pause. "Dan, are you sure? That's a significant amount of money." "I'm aware. Dissolve it. And while you're at it, I need you to pull my files on the Ascent Aviation portfolio. I'm thinking of liquidating some assets." "The helicopters?" "Just one. The Bell 407. Get it prepped and flight ready for June 15th. Another pause, longer this time. Richard knew me well enough to know when something significant was happening. "Dan, what are you planning?" "I'm going to my daughter's wedding," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." "I see. Do you want me to?" "One more thing. Contact the San Francisco Chronicle. Tell them I'm available for an interview about the 20th anniversary of Sentinel Robotics' founding. Make sure they mention that I'm the primary patent holder for the SE7 security architecture. That's going to generate attention. That's the idea. Schedule it for June 14th, one day before the wedding. Dan? Also, reach out to my stockbroker. I want a portfolio summary printed. Every holding, every asset, full evaluation. And Richard? Make sure it's thorough. I want Chase Whitmore III's private equity firm on there, the one where Emily's fiancé works. You own shares in 18% of Whitmore Capital Partners, acquired through a holding company in 2019. They don't know it's me, but they're about to find out. I could hear Richard typing. When he spoke again, his voice was different, professional, focused, the tone he used when he knew a client was serious about something significant. I'll have everything ready. Dan, are you sure about this? I looked at the formal disinvitation on my desk, with its gold calligraphy and its warm regards. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next 2 months were busy. I didn't reach out to Emily, and she didn't reach out to me. I saw her posts on social media continue, dress fittings, bridesmaids' lunches, rehearsal dinner planning. In one photo, she stood between Chase's mother and her future mother-in-law, all 3 women wearing matching smiles and designer sunglasses. The caption read, "So blessed to have such an amazing family. Can't wait for the big day." I wasn't in any of the photos, but I was busy with my own preparations. The Chronicle interview ran on June 14th, as planned. It was a full-page feature in the business section, complete with photos from the old days. Me in my 20s, standing in the original Sentinel Robotics workshop. Me shaking hands with the Secretary of Defense at a technology summit. Me accepting an innovation award from the IEE. The headline read, "Silicon Valley's Hidden Billionaire, How Daniel Hale Built an Empire and Then Disappeared." The article was thorough. Too thorough for comfort, but that was the point. It detailed my net worth, estimated at $1.3 billion. It listed my holdings, the patent portfolio, the real estate, the aviation assets, the stake in various technology companies. It mentioned that I'd lived quietly since my wife's death, that most people in the industry assumed I'd retired or lost my fortune. I haven't lost anything, I was quoted as saying. I just decided that wealth is something to be stewarded quietly. My wife taught me that the most important things in life can't be measured in dollars. The article went viral in tech circles. By evening, my phone was exploding with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, old colleagues, former employees, investors who wanted to pitch me opportunities. I ignored all of them, but I knew Emily would see it. More importantly, I knew Chase's family would see it. I spent the evening in my hangar at the private airfield 20 miles outside the city. Richard had arranged everything beautifully. The Bell 407 sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights, its deep blue paint catching the light like water. It was one of 3 aircraft I owned. This one was the smallest, the most maneuverable, and the most dramatic for what I had planned. My pilot, Marcus Webb, stood beside it, running through his pre-flight check. Marcus was former military, early 50s, someone who asked very few questions and executed every job with precision. I'd hired him 5 years ago to manage my small aviation fleet, and he'd proven worth every penny. "She's ready," he said as I approached. "Fuel tanks topped off, all systems checked. Where are we going?" "Westbridge Estate. You know it?" He whistled. "The luxury wedding venue in Sonoma?" "Yeah, I know it. That's some high-end real estate. Who's getting married?" "My daughter." Marcus paused in his inspection, turning to look at me with raised eyebrows. "Your daughter's getting married at Westbridge, and you need a helicopter to get there? It's complicated." "I'm starting to see that." He didn't push for details, which was why I liked him. "What time tomorrow?" "Ceremony starts at 3. I want to arrive at 3:30, right when they're taking the formal photos." "So, we're making an entrance." "You could say that." Marcus grinned. It was the first time I'd seen him smile in 5 years of working together. "Mr. Hale, I think this is going to be the most fun I've had in this job." "Let's hope so." I spent the night at the hangar, sleeping in the small office upstairs. I could have gone home, but I wanted to be close to the helicopter, to feel the reality of what I was about to do. Around 2 in the morning, I walked out onto the tarmac and looked up at the stars. The night was clear, unusually so for June in California. The fog had stayed away from the valley, and the sky stretched out above me like black velvet studded with diamonds. Sarah would have loved this. Sarah would have talked me out of this. Sarah wasn't here. "I hope you understand, sweetheart," I said to the stars, to the memory of my wife, to the ghost of the life we'd built together. I tried to be small for her. I tried to let her find her own way, but she needs to know who her father is. She needs to understand what she threw away. The stars didn't answer, but I didn't expect them to. June 15th dawned clear and warm. Perfect wedding weather. I woke at 7, showered in the hangar's basic bathroom, and put on the suit I'd brought, a Tom Ford 3-piece in charcoal gray that I'd had tailored specifically for this occasion. It had cost more than my truck, which seemed fitting. I paired it with a white shirt, a silver tie, and Italian leather shoes that probably cost more per square inch than Emily's disinvitation. Marcus arrived at 8, carrying coffee and breakfast sandwiches. "Big day," he said, handing me a cup. "The biggest." "You nervous?" I considered the question. Was I nervous? No. I was calm, crystalline clear, the way I used to feel before major business presentations when I knew my data was solid and my case was unassailable. "I'm certain," I said. "That's different than nervous." We went over the flight plan. Westbridge Estate was 45 minutes away by helicopter, situated on 300 acres of rolling hills and vineyards. It was the kind of place that showed up in magazines with headlines like "California's Most Exclusive Wedding Venues" and "Where Tech Royalty Says I Do." The ceremony would take place in the main garden, overlooking the valley. According to the venue's website, yes, I'd done my research, there was a large open lawn behind the main house where they took formal wedding party photos. That's where I'd land. "Terrain looks good," Marcus said, studying the satellite photos. "Plenty of clearance, no overhead wires. We can set down about 200 feet from the main photo area." "How loud will it be?" "At that distance? Everyone within half a mile will know we're there?" "Perfect." By noon, I was pacing the hangar like a caged animal. By 1, I'd checked my phone 17 times, looking at Emily's social media. She'd posted a photo of her and her bridesmaids getting ready, all of them holding champagne glasses, their makeup perfect. The caption, "Here comes the bride." 73 people had liked it in the first hour. I wasn't one of them. At 2 o'clock, Marcus and I began final preparations. He went over the helicopter's systems one last time while I sat in the pilot's office, looking at the documents Richard had prepared. The portfolio summary was impressive. 60 pages of dense financial information that told the story of 3 decades of careful investing and strategic asset management. I also had the original trust fund documents, the ones that would have given Emily $8 million. I'd brought them for dramatic effect. At 2:30, Marcus stuck his head into the office. "We're green for takeoff. You ready?" I stood, straightening my tie, and picked up the documents. "Let's go to a wedding." The helicopter lifted off at 2:45 p.m., the skids rising smoothly off the tarmac as Marcus worked the controls with practiced efficiency. The afternoon sun caught the aircraft's windows, and for a moment we seemed to hang suspended between earth and sky, caught in that brief moment of transition between being grounded and being free. Then we were climbing, the hangar falling away beneath us, the patchwork of suburban streets and shopping centers spreading out in all directions. From this height, everything looked small and orderly. Neat little houses, neat little lives, neat little problems. I wondered if that's how Emily saw me. Small, neat, easily contained, and easily dismissed. "ETA 42 minutes, Marcus said through the headset. "Winds in our favor." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Now that we were airborne, now that the plan was actually happening, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not nervousness exactly, more like anticipation. The feeling you get before diving into cold water when you know the shock is coming, but you also know you'll survive it. We flew north, following Highway 101 as it wound up through Marin County and into Sonoma. Below us, traffic crawled in both directions, people heading to weekend getaways, to wine tastings, to whatever small pleasures they'd carved out of their ordinary lives. They didn't know a man in a helicopter was passing overhead, on his way to crash his daughter's wedding. They wouldn't believe it if you told them. Hell, I barely believed it myself. "You want to tell me what this is about?" Marcus asked after we'd been flying for 20 minutes. "I mean, I'm getting paid either way, but I'm curious." I considered how much to tell him, then decided, what the hell? In 30 minutes, everyone would know anyway. "My daughter is getting married today," I said. "To a man from a wealthy family. They're having a luxury wedding with 200 guests, tech executives, investors, old money, the kind of event that gets covered in society pages." "Okay." "She didn't invite me, said I wouldn't fit in, that I'd embarrass her." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then, "That's cold." "She sent me a formal letter uninviting me, cited budget constraints." "Budget constraints," he repeated, glancing at me. "Do they know who you are?" "No, I've been keeping a low profile since my wife died, deliberately. I wanted to see who would stick around when they thought I had nothing to offer." "And your daughter didn't stick around." "My daughter decided I was an embarrassment because I drive an old truck and wear flannel shirts." Marcus shook his head, returning his attention to the controls. "So, we're making sure she knows exactly who she uninvited." "Something like that." "I like it. Petty as hell, but I like it." "It's not petty," I said, though maybe it was. "It's accountability. She needs to understand that you don't measure a person's worth by their appearance. That family means more than optics. And you're going to teach her that by landing a helicopter at her wedding." "In the absence of better options, yes." He laughed. Man, I wish I could see her face. "Stick around. You might get to." We flew in silence for a while. The landscape below transitioned from suburban sprawl to agricultural land, vineyards and farms, the occasional cluster of buildings marking small towns. Sonoma County stretched out like a patchwork quilt, all browns and greens, stitched together by winding roads. At 3:15, Marcus pointed ahead. "That's Westbridge." I leaned forward, looking through the windscreen. In the distance, on a hilltop surrounded by vineyards, I could see an estate that looked like it had been transplanted from the Italian countryside. Stone buildings with terracotta roofs, formal gardens arranged in geometric patterns, trees lining long driveways. Even from here, I could see cars parked in neat rows. Expensive cars, the kind that come with their own prestige. My heart rate picked up. "How do you want to play this?" Marcus asked. "Standard approach, or do we make some noise?" "Make noise?" He grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." We descended as we approached, dropping from 3,000 feet to 500. The helicopter's engine growled louder as Marcus adjusted our trajectory. We came in from the south, following the valley, then banked sharply to approach the estate from behind. At 3:28, we crested the last hill, and suddenly the entire venue spread out before us. It was spectacular. The main house was enormous, 3 stories of honey-colored stone with arched windows and balconies dripping with flowers. The gardens were even more impressive. Terraced lawns cascading down the hillside, connected by stone staircases and punctuated by fountains and sculpture. At the center of it all, in the main garden, I could see a ceremony setup that probably cost more than most people's cars. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an altar covered in flowers, and a small crowd of people in formal wear. But the ceremony was over. The chairs were empty. The wedding party had moved to the lawn behind the main house, where a photographer was positioning them for formal portraits. I could see Emily in her white dress, a confection of silk and lace that probably cost $30,000. Chase stood beside her in a tuxedo, surrounded by groomsmen and bridesmaids, all of them arranged in careful poses. Beyond them, the guests milled around, men in dark suits, women in designer dresses, all of them holding champagne flutes and chatting in the golden afternoon light. 200 people having the time of their lives at my daughter's wedding. The wedding I wasn't invited to. "There," I said, pointing to the photo lawn. "Put us down right behind them." Marcus didn't hesitate. He adjusted our approach, bringing us in lower and faster than a standard landing. The helicopter's shadow raced across the manicured grass, and I saw the first person look up. A man in the crowd, shading his eyes against the sun, his expression confused. Then the sound hit them. The Bell 407's engine roar, already considerable at cruising altitude, became absolutely thunderous as Marcus brought us in for landing. At 200 feet, the rotor wash began affecting the ground below. Flowers bent and scattered, tablecloths on nearby tables lifted and flapped, champagne glasses toppled. The wedding guests finally understood that something unusual was happening. People started pointing upward. The photographer dropped his camera. One of the bridesmaids screamed, though whether from fear or excitement I couldn't tell. The wedding party broke formation, everyone turning to stare at the descending aircraft. I watched Emily's face through the windscreen. Even from here, I could see her mouth form a perfect O of shock. Chase grabbed her arm. Whether to steady her or himself wasn't clear. An older man in an expensive suit, Chase's father, I assumed, started shouting something, his face turning red with fury. Marcus brought us down with perfect precision, the skids touching the grass with barely a bump. The rotor wash created chaos in a 20-yard radius. Napkins flew, women grabbed at their dresses and hats, men turned away from the dust and debris. The photographer's backdrop screen tore loose from its moorings and cartwheeled across the lawn like a tumbleweed. "We're down," Marcus said, beginning the shutdown sequence. "Hell of an entrance." Through the windscreen, I could see security guards running toward us, 2 men in dark suits, speaking urgently into radios. Behind them, the wedding guests were in complete disarray. Some were recording on their phones, others were backing away. A few were trying to shield their expensive outfits from the continuing rotor wash. And at the center of it all, Emily stood frozen, staring at the helicopter like it was an alien spacecraft that had just landed in her perfect afternoon. The rotors began to slow. The engine's roar decreased to a whine, then to a hum. In the sudden relative quiet, I could hear voices. Angry shouts, confused questions, someone yelling about lawsuits. "Time to make your entrance," Marcus said. I took a breath, picked up my folder of documents, and opened the door. The first thing that hit me was the heat. Inside the air-conditioned helicopter, I'd forgotten it was nearly 90 degrees outside. The second thing was the smell. Expensive perfume, crushed flowers, and the distinctive scent of panic. I stepped down from the helicopter, my Italian shoes touching the immaculate grass. I straightened my suit jacket, picked a piece of flying debris off my sleeve, and began walking toward the stunned crowd. The security guards reached me first. The larger one, a man built like a linebacker, held up his hand. "Sir, this is private property. You can't—" "I'm the bride's father," I said calmly, "and I need to speak with my daughter." He blinked, clearly not expecting that response. His partner, a younger man with a military bearing, spoke into his radio. "We've got a situation at the photo lawn. Need supervisor immediately." The wedding guests were starting to recover from their shock. A woman in a purple dress was complaining loudly about her ruined hat. A man in a tuxedo was filming me on his phone, narrating, "Unbelievable. Just landed a helicopter in the middle of the wedding." Chase's father pushed through the crowd, his face now an alarming shade of crimson. "What is the meaning of this? Who the hell do you think you are?" "Daniel Hale," I said, extending my hand politely. "I don't believe we've met." He ignored my hand. "I don't care who you are. This is private property and you're disrupting my son's wedding. Security, escort this man." "Dad?" Emily's voice cut through the commotion. She was pushing through the crowd, Chase trailing behind her, both of them looking shell-shocked. Her perfect makeup was smudged from touching her face, and her elaborate hairstyle was coming loose from the rotor wash. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. I held up the folder. I brought your wedding gift. Thought I should deliver it in person. Your wedding gift. She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Dad, you just landed a helicopter at my wedding. You ruined everything. The photos, the atmosphere, you scared everyone. I received your letter, I interrupted, keeping my voice level. The one explaining that you couldn't accommodate me due to budget constraints. Chase reached us, putting his arm around Emily protectively. Or possessively, hard to tell. Look, Dan, I think you need to leave. This is inappropriate. Is it? I turned to him, and something in my expression made him take a step back. Tell me, Chase, what's inappropriate? A father attending his daughter's wedding? Or a daughter telling her father he's too poor to be seen at her expensive party? That's not what I said, Emily protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You said I wouldn't fit in, that this was a luxury event, that I'd embarrass you in front of your wealthy friends. I looked around at the watching crowd. More phones were out now, recording everything. Well, here I am. Let's see if I fit in now. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, the trust fund paperwork. I held it up so Emily could see it. This was going to be my wedding gift to you. $8 million in a trust fund. The interest alone would have given you $500,000 a year for the rest of your life. Emily's face went white. Chase's eyes got very wide. Was going to be? I repeated. Past tense. As of 3 days ago, that trust fund no longer exists. Dad, what? I dissolved it, because you made it very clear that you measure people by their bank accounts rather than their character, and I decided I don't want to reward that value system. Someone in the crowd gasped. I heard whispered conversations spreading like wildfire. Did he say 8 million? Is that legal? Who is this guy? Then another voice, sharp with recognition. Wait, Daniel Hale. Daniel Hale. Oh my God, is that the Daniel Hale? I turned to see a man in his 40s staring at me, his phone already out. He looked familiar, probably someone I'd met at a tech conference years ago. He was already typing frantically. Founder of Sentinel Robotics, he announced to the crowd, reading from his screen. Primary patent holder for the SO7 security architecture. Net worth, holy shit, net worth estimated at $1.3 billion. The effect was immediate and electric. Every phone in the crowd came out. People started Googling frantically, their screens glowing in the afternoon sun. I heard fragments of whispered conversations. Billion with a B? He owns aviation companies. 3 aircraft, it says here. 18% stake in Whitmore Capital Partners. That last one made Chase's father freeze. He looked at me with new eyes, calculating eyes, and I saw the exact moment he realized what I'd just said. Whitmore Capital Partners, I said, turning to face him directly. That's your firm, isn't it, Mr. Whitmore? The one where Chase works? According to my records, I acquired an 18% stake in 2019 through a holding company, which makes me your second largest shareholder. The color drained from his face. That's not possible, Chase stammered. We would have been notified of a stake that large. You were. The notification went to a holding company called Ascent Holdings. You probably assumed it was another investment firm. It's not. It's my private portfolio. I pulled out another document, the portfolio summary Richard had prepared. I handed it directly to Chase's father, who took it with shaking hands. You'll find all the details there. Ascent Holdings is wholly owned by me, which means I effectively own 18% of your company. The shares I hold are worth approximately $42 million at current valuation. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the people who'd been complaining about their ruined clothes were staring now, transfixed by the unfolding drama. Chase's father was scanning the document, his expression shifting from shock to disbelief to something like fear. This is... you're... a middle-class embarrassment who wouldn't fit in at your son's wedding, I finished. Yes, that's what your future daughter-in-law told me. Emily made a sound like a wounded animal. She tried to speak, but no words came out. I turned back to her, and for just a moment, my anger faded, and I saw my little girl again. The child who used to bring me crayon drawings, who cried when her goldfish died, who fell asleep holding my hand during thunderstorms. But that little girl was gone. The woman standing before me had made her choices. I'm not here to ruin your wedding, Emily, I said softly. I'm here to give you a gift, a different kind of gift than I originally planned. What gift? She whispered. The truth. The truth that you can't judge a person's worth by how they dress or what they drive. The truth that family is supposed to mean something more than optics and networking opportunities. And the truth that when you decide someone isn't good enough for you, you better make damn sure you know who you're dismissing. I put the documents back in the folder and held it out to her. This portfolio summary shows everything I own. Every investment, every asset, every holding. I want you to see what you decided wasn't good enough for your wedding, what you decided would embarrass you in front of your friends. She didn't take it, just stared at the folder like it might bite her. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. That's different. I lowered the folder. You saw an old man in flannel shirts driving a beat-up truck, and you decided that was all I was. You never asked about my life, about what I did for work, about how I supported myself. You just assumed I was poor and therefore embarrassing. That's not fair, Chase protested. Emily sent me a letter uninviting me from her wedding, I said, my voice hardening again. She cited budget constraints at a venue that costs $50,000 a day. She told me to my face that I wouldn't fit in with wealthy people, so don't tell me what Emily did or didn't do. I have the receipts. More whispers from the crowd. Someone said, She uninvited her own father. Another voice. That's harsh. A third. No wonder he showed up like this. Emily's eyes were filling with tears, her perfect makeup starting to run. Dad, please, I made a mistake. I didn't understand. You understood perfectly. You just thought I was too insignificant to matter. I turned to address the crowd, all these wealthy people with their expensive clothes and their shocked faces. For those of you recording this, and I can see you are, let me be clear about something. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my daughter needed to learn that wealth isn't about displays. It's not about fancy venues or designer clothes or who drives what car. My wife and I built everything we had through hard work and innovation. We could have lived in mansions and driven luxury cars. Instead, we chose to live modestly and invest in things that mattered. I looked back at Emily. Your mother never forgot where we came from. She never lost sight of what was important. I hoped I'd raised you the same way, but somewhere along the line, you learned the wrong lessons. Dad, I'll leave you to your perfect wedding with your perfect guests. But understand this. You didn't uninvite a poor man today. You uninvited your father. And that decision is going to cost you more than $8 million. I started walking back toward the helicopter. Emily called after me, her voice breaking. Dad, please, don't leave like this. We can talk about this. I kept walking. Chase's father followed me, his voice urgent. Mr. Hale, please, let's discuss this rationally. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgments. I'm not interested in being courted now that you know my net worth, I said without turning around. Surely we can reach some understanding. For the sake of the children? The children are adults. They made adult choices. Now they get to live with adult consequences. I reached the helicopter where Marcus was waiting, having watched the whole scene unfold. His expression was carefully neutral, but I could see approval in his eyes. Ready to go? He asked. More than ready. I climbed into the passenger seat, and Marcus began the startup sequence. Through the windscreen, I could see Emily trying to push through the security guards, her wedding dress dragging in the grass, mascara streaking down her face. Chase was holding her back, or maybe she was holding on to him. Hard to tell. Chase's father stood nearby, still clutching my portfolio summary, looking like someone who just watched their entire world reorganize itself. The guests were a mass of phones and shocked faces, everyone recording, everyone Googling, everyone trying to understand what they'd just witnessed. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The noise built again, and people backed away, remembering what happened last time. Emily broke free from Chase and ran toward the helicopter, waving her arms. I could see her shouting something, but couldn't hear it over the engine. I picked up my headset and looked at Marcus. Let's go home. We lifted off at 3:47 p.m., the helicopter rising smoothly as the wedding guests below scattered from the rotor wash for the second time in 20 minutes. I kept my eyes forward, not looking back, not wanting to see Emily's face as I flew away from her wedding, but I could imagine it. Marcus didn't speak until we'd climbed to 1,000 feet and leveled off. Then, that was something. That was necessary. She looked pretty devastated. She should be. We flew in silence for a while, retracing our path over vineyards and farms. The afternoon sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the landscape. It should have been beautiful, but I felt numb, hollowed out, like I'd just run a marathon and was now dealing with the aftermath. My phone started buzzing, then it didn't stop. I pulled it out to find 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and notifications from every social media platform I'd ever joined. The video was already spreading. Someone had uploaded footage to Twitter with the caption, "Helicopter dad crashes daughter's wedding after being uninvited. Turns out he's a billionaire." It had 300,000 views in 20 minutes. The texts were from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old colleagues, distant relatives, business acquaintances, all of them suddenly very interested in reconnecting. Most of them started with some variation of, "Hey, saw the news," or "that video of you." I turned the phone off. "Going viral?" Marcus asked. Comprehensively. "Welcome to the internet age. By tomorrow morning, you'll be on every morning show." He wasn't wrong. By the time we landed back at the hangar at 4:30, my phone, when I turned it back on, showed 147 new notifications. Richard had called 6 times. The Chronicle had called asking for a follow-up interview. Someone claiming to be from Good Morning America wanted to schedule me for Monday. I ignored all of it and went to my office, where I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in the dark, watching the sun set through the window. My phone rang again. This time it was Emily. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time before answering. "Dad." Her voice was thick with tears. "Dad, please. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please just talk to me." "I'm listening." "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money or the companies or any of it. You never told me." "Would it have mattered if I had told you?" I interrupted. "If I'd shown up in a limousine wearing a Rolex, would you have treated me differently?" Silence. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "The problem isn't that you didn't know I was wealthy, Emily. The problem is that you thought it was okay to uninvite me because you thought I wasn't." I know, and I'm so sorry. I got caught up in everything. Chase's family, the planning, trying to make everything perfect. Perfect for whom?" "What?" "You wanted everything perfect. But perfect for whom? For you? For Chase's family? For your guests?" I paused. "It certainly wasn't for me. Dad, please, I love you. I know I hurt you, but I love you." "Do you? Or do you love the idea of having a billionaire father now that you know that's what I am?" "That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me truthfully, Emily. If I showed up at your apartment right now in my old truck, wearing flannel and jeans, would you want to be seen with me? Would you introduce me to your friends, or would you be embarrassed?" The silence stretched out so long I thought she'd hung up. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "God help me, I don't know." At least she was honest. "Thank you for that," I said. "It's more honesty than I've gotten from you in months." "What do I do, Dad? How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can. Some things, once broken, stay broken." "You can't mean that." "I hope I don't. But right now, sitting here, thinking about that letter you sent me, thinking about you telling me I'd embarrass you, Emily, you broke something in me today, and I don't know how to fix it either." She was crying in earnest now, those deep, gasping sobs that reminded me of when she was little and had fallen off her bike. I used to be able to fix everything with a hug and a Band-Aid, but this wasn't a skinned knee. This was something much deeper. "The trust fund," she managed to say. "You really dissolved it?" "Yes." "All of it?" "All 8 million. "Where did it go?" I hadn't planned to tell her, but maybe she deserved to know. Maybe it would help her understand. "I donated it. To 3 organizations your mother cared about, a children's hospital, a women's shelter, and a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. They'll do more good with it than you would have." "Dad, I'm tired, Emily. I'm going to go now." "Wait, please. We'll talk again, eventually, but not today. Today, I need to be alone." I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off completely this time, removing the battery for good measure. Then I sat in the dark office and finished my whiskey and thought about Sarah. The story exploded over the weekend. By Saturday morning, Helicopter Dad was trending on Twitter. The video had been viewed 40 million times. News outlets were calling it everything from the most dramatic wedding crash ever to a lesson in not judging books by their covers. The hot takes came fast and furious. This is what happens when materialism destroys family values. Both father and daughter are wrong here. She shouldn't have uninvited him, but he shouldn't have humiliated her publicly. Actually, this is brilliant. He taught her a lesson she'll never forget. The real villain is Chase's family for creating this toxic environment. People dug into my history. The Sentinel robotics story was retold in a dozen publications. Someone found photos of Sarah and me from the early days, young, idealistic, working 70-hour weeks in a garage that we'd converted into a workshop. The comments on those photos made me cry. This is what real partnership looks like. They built something meaningful instead of chasing status. His wife died, and he stayed humble. The daughter should be ashamed. I didn't read the comments defending Emily, though I knew they existed. I'd humiliated her on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Some people thought that made me the villain of the story. Maybe they were right. On Sunday morning, Richard showed up at my house with coffee and newspapers. I'd been avoiding the news, but he insisted I should see how the story was playing out. "You're a folk hero," he said, spreading the papers across my kitchen table. "Look at this one. Silicon Valley's invisible billionaire reminds us that character can't be bought. And this one. Father of the Year or Revenge Fantasy. The helicopter wedding crash. Explained. I don't feel like a folk hero. Maybe not, but you've sparked a national conversation about wealth, family, and values. That's something. I just wanted my daughter to understand what she did. She understands now." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. This is from her Instagram this morning. I took the phone reluctantly. Emily had posted a photo of herself and Chase, both of them looking exhausted and serious. The caption read, "I need to address what happened at our wedding. Yes, my father arrived uninvited in a helicopter. Yes, it was dramatic and shocking. But the real shock is why it happened. I uninvited my own father from my wedding because I was ashamed of how he looked, because I cared more about impressing our guests than honoring my family. I was wrong. Completely devastatingly wrong. Dad, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I love you. I should have said that more." The post had 2.3 million likes. "She's getting killed in the comments," Richard said gently, "but she's also getting support. People are saying it takes courage to admit this publicly." I handed back his phone. It shouldn't have taken a public humiliation for her to figure this out. Maybe not, but she's figured it out now. What are you going to do? I don't know. You could reach out, meet her halfway. Could I? I looked at Richard. Tell me honestly, if she hadn't been humiliated in front of 200 people and 40 million internet viewers, would she have apologized? Or would she have just moved on with her perfect life, satisfied that she'd successfully excluded the embarrassing father? Richard was quiet for a long moment. I can't answer that. Neither can I, and that's the problem. Over the next few days, the media attention intensified. I did one interview, with the Chronicle again, because I trusted the journalist, where I tried to explain my perspective without completely destroying Emily's reputation. I don't hate my daughter, I said carefully. I love her. That's why this hurts so much. But at some point, we all have to decide what kind of people we want to be. I spent 8 years living quietly, deliberately obscuring my wealth, because I wanted the people in my life to value me for who I am, not what I have. My daughter failed that test, not because she didn't know I had money, but because she thought it was acceptable to exclude me because she thought I didn't. The interview was titled Silicon Valley Billionaire on Why He Crashed His Daughter's Wedding. It wasn't about revenge, it was about values. It was viewed 17 million times. Emily tried calling every day. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to talk to her. God, I desperately wanted to talk to her, but because I didn't know what to say. Every conversation felt like it would either end in meaningless apologies or permanent rupture, and I wasn't ready for either. Chase's father called twice. I blocked his number. The Whitmore Capital Partners Board of Directors sent a formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss our shared interests in the firm. I sent back a one-line response. I'm satisfied with my current level of involvement, which was to say, none. Marcus called to check in. You holding up? Define holding up. Still breathing? Barely. That counts. Listen, I don't know if this helps, but for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Maybe not the kind thing, but the right thing. Those should be the same thing. In a perfect world, yeah. But we don't live in a perfect world. Sometimes the right thing hurts. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house, my modest, middle-class, embarrassing house, and thought about that. Sometimes the right thing hurts. Had I done the right thing? I'd humiliated my daughter on her wedding day. I'd revealed information that would fundamentally change how everyone in her social circle saw her. I'd taken what should have been a joyful celebration and turned it into a viral sensation where she was the villain. But she had uninvited me. She had told me I wasn't good enough. She had chosen status over family. Did that justify what I'd done? I didn't know. I still don't know. 3 weeks after the wedding, Emily showed up at my house. I saw her car pull into my driveway, a new BMW that probably cost what most people make in a year. She sat in it for almost 5 minutes before getting out, and I watched from my kitchen window, wondering if she'd drive away. Finally, she opened the door and walked up to my porch. She was dressed simply, jeans, a plain blouse, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked young and scared and heartbroken. She rang the doorbell. I almost didn't answer. My hand was on the doorknob for a full minute before I turned it. We stared at each other across the threshold. She'd lost weight. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Hi, sweetheart. Can I come in?" I stepped aside, and she entered my small, embarrassing house. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, which, I realized, she basically was. She'd been here exactly twice since I'd bought it, both times briefly, both times with the air of someone visiting a relative in a nursing home. "Do you want coffee?" I asked. Please." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table Sarah and I had bought at IKEA 20 years ago, scratched and worn and perfectly functional. I poured 2 cups of coffee and added cream to hers the way she liked it. She wrapped her hands around the mug like she was cold, even though it was July. "I don't know where to start," she said. "The beginning is usually good." "The beginning," she laughed bitterly. "The beginning is when I became someone Mom would have been ashamed of." I didn't argue. "I've spent the last 3 weeks thinking about what you said, about measuring people's worth, about family and values, and—" She trailed off, staring into her coffee. "I talked to Chase's mother last week. She wanted to discuss managing the PR situation. That's what she called it, the PR situation." "What did you tell her?" "I told her there is no PR situation. There's just the truth that her son's fiancé is a terrible person who uninvited her own father from her wedding because he wasn't rich enough." "You're not a terrible person, Emily." "Aren't I? I did a terrible thing." "One terrible thing doesn't define you." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "You really believe that?" "I want to." We sat in silence for a while, drinking our coffee. Outside, a neighbor was mowing their lawn. Normal suburban sounds on a normal suburban afternoon. "I called off the wedding," Emily said suddenly. I set down my cup. "What?" "The wedding. I called it off, or postponed it, technically. We're not getting married next month like we planned." "Emily, Chase and I need time to figure out who we are separately before we figure out who we are together. And I need time to figure out who I want to be. Because the person I was, the person who uninvited you, that's not who I thought I was. And it's definitely not who I want to be." "What does Chase think about this?" "He's angry. His parents are furious. But honestly," she shrugged, "I don't really care what they think anymore. The last 3 weeks have shown me exactly how they operate. It's all transactional. All strategy and positioning and what serves their interests. Your dramatic entrance at the wedding. Chase's mother wanted to sue you for emotional distress. His father wanted to buy your silence with some kind of business deal. Nobody ever asked if maybe, just maybe, I deserved what happened." "You didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of 200 people. Didn't I?" She met my eyes. "I humiliated you first, just privately. I told you that you weren't good enough to be seen at my wedding. At least you had the decency to call me out publicly." "That wasn't decency, Emily. That was anger." "Maybe, but it was honest anger. You weren't pretending or strategizing or managing optics. You were just honest. And I haven't been honest in a very long time." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Not fancy calligraphy this time. Just a regular envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. "I wrote you a letter. A real one, not a formal uninvitation. I tried to explain everything, why I got so caught up in status, why I lost sight of what mattered, why I hurt the person who loved me most." She slid it across the table. But I realized something while I was writing it. I was still trying to make excuses, still trying to justify what I did. And there's no justification. I was wrong. Period. I chose appearance over substance. I chose Chase's family's approval over your presence. I chose wrong. I looked at the envelope, but didn't open it. "What do you want from me, Emily?" "Honestly, I don't know. Forgiveness would be nice, but I don't think I've earned it yet. Maybe just time? A chance to show you that I can do better, that I want to do better." "I never wanted to cut you out of my life," I said quietly. "Even when I was flying to your wedding in that helicopter, even when I was standing there in front of all those people, I didn't want this to be the end." "What did you want?" "I wanted you to see me. Really see me. Not as a bank account or a social liability or a father-shaped obligation. Just me?" Her face crumpled. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." I stood up and walked around the table. She stood too, and I pulled her into a hug. She collapsed against me, sobbing the way she used to when she was little and the world had wounded her. "I loved Mom so much," she cried into my shoulder. "And when she died, I felt like I had to be strong, had to be successful, had to prove that I could make it without her. And somewhere in all that, I forgot that you were grieving too. I forgot that you were still here. I was here. I said, holding her tight. I'm still here. We stood like that for a long time, my daughter crying and me just holding her, remembering when I could solve all her problems with a hug. Some problems don't have solutions, they just have time and work and the slow process of rebuilding what was broken. When she finally pulled away, wiping her eyes, she looked exhausted but lighter somehow. I know I can't undo what I did, she said, but I want to try to make it right, however long that takes. It's going to take a while. I know. And I'm not giving you back that $8 million. She actually laughed at that. I don't want it. The organizations you gave it to will do more good with it than I would have. I don't even know what I would have done with $8 million. Bought more stuff I don't need to impress people I don't like? Probably. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to impress anyone, when I'm just me. That's the best thing I've heard you say in years. She picked up her coffee, finished it, and set the mug down with a decisive clink. I should go. I've taken up enough of your time. You can stay if you want. We could order pizza, watch a movie, do something normal. She hesitated, and I could see the war playing out on her face, the part of her that wanted to stay versus the part that felt she didn't deserve to. I'd like that, she said finally. If you're sure. I'm sure. So we ordered pizza, pepperoni and mushroom, her favorite since she was 8, and watched The Princess Bride on my old couch, and for a few hours we were just a father and daughter spending time together. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a start.